one of the things that, we talk about a lot on here is that what is one person going to do? And you alluded to that in what you were saying in terms of using your voice and using your platform. And I think that is the most important thing you can do. But I don't think people really understand how infuriating it is when you fight nonstop for labor and the labor unions don't even give you the time of day. Because I know, like, it's infuriating. And it's such this, I think, misconception of when we say labor that we're talking about unions. And we're not talking about unions. I mean, there's some that are better than others, but, so explain the level of frustration when you're a fighter for workers and yet the unions do not have your back.
I would make a distinction. I think that's what you're trying to get at, Jen, the distinction between the leadership of unions that are business unionist and the few exceptions that aren't business unionist, but they're very, very hard to find these days, and the rank and file that is angry at the business union's leadership. And most of the union, unfortunately, what has happened is because of the business union's leadership, meaning leadership that is not fighting for workers, not building militant struggle, let alone any kind of strike action or general strike. And they're not even fighting for their own contracts. Really, it's always, you hear the term bargaining table. You don't hear fight back. You don't hear strike. It's always about the bargaining table. It's a very, very mistaken idea that somehow you bargain as workers, you bargain for your rights against the bosses. No, the bosses have no reason to concede to your demands unless you create leverage for yourself. And for that, you have to build a fight back, because capitalism's status quo is that the bosses have all the power, they have all the wealth, they have all the political clout, and they have every aspect of power to crush you. And the only way you as workers can gain something is if you collectively fight back and you shut down the profit machine. That is the only threat we can pose to the bosses and their system, is to shut down their profit machine. And that's why strikes and general strikes are so very crucial. But that's not happening because the labor leadership are gatekeepers against their union members. So in our analysis, we make a distinction between rank and file union members who do want to fight. I'm not implying that they necessarily agree with us on every single thing, but the point is, do they want to fight back? And keep in mind, union members are 10% maybe of the workforce. The rest of the working class is not unionized. So we both we fight along. We try to mobilize rank and file union members, and we try to mobilize non-unionized workers. And because we refuse to accept the gatekeeping by the labor leaders is why we are able to win. I mean, just to give you an example, when I was campaigning for $15 an hour in our first city council campaign in 2013, back then, at that time, the labor leaders, I used to be at my table. I used to be there every day. I mean, the Stranger actually wrote an article about me saying, how does Kshama Sawant manage to be in all places at all times? Because I was going to every protest action. I was actually putting forward demands for taxi drivers, rideshare drivers, all of that. And so we were campaigning for 15. I would be at my table, and the labor leaders would come and yell at me to my face, saying, "Don't talk about 15 because you can't say 15. We don't want to build, we don't want to build against that about that. We are making deals with the bosses." Basically, they're always in wheeling and dealing mode. They're having behind the scenes discussions with the bosses, and it's okay for them, precisely for the reason that Peter said. They're careerists. So in other words, when they go and talk to the bosses, they are looking out for their own careers, not for the working class. If they were looking out for the working class, then they would want to do what I'm doing, which is a militant fight back. And so they absolutely did not want 15 to even be mentioned, but it is because I won my election, which ended up being the referendum on 15. I mean, the Seattle Times said that my election was a referendum on 15 because that was our flagship demand. So people who were voting for me, I was completely unknown. We were just, out of nowhere. And people voted for me because they wanted to fight for $15 an hour. So my election was a referendum on 15. And that forced the labor leadership, it forced a choice on them. Either they can completely lose face by being on the sidelines and not fighting for 15, or they could join the struggle and then do something about it. That's how we were able to push for it. And so as far as being frustrated, I am angry about their betrayals, but I don't get frustrated in the sense that I don't expect anything different from them. They are
Right.
business unionist leaders. I know this is what they're going to do, and to the extent that they get away with it, it is an indication of how far we have to go in building a militant rank and file uprising, and we are so far from it. I mean, yes, I do. Frustration is one thing, one way of expressing it. The other way of expressing it is for me to just give sober assessments of how bad things are in the labor movement and how much of a fight back we need. But the way this type of fight back will happen is not like a linear thing of one day at a time. We need breakthrough victories. And that is why we are fighting so hard for this campaign, because I have no doubt in my mind that if we were elected, it will be nothing short of a political earthquake. It will give us an international platform to actually begin building fighting movements for workers. And the labor movement, the labor leadership will not do, they won't be able to stop us. I mean, they will try to, and it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying that it's all rosy after that. It will be a massive struggle at every step of the way.
Yeah.
All my 10 years on the city council were a struggle every step of the way against the gatekeepers. But that is an opportunity for us to build that fight back while having the attention of millions of American working people. And I'll tell you something, the idea of me being in Congress is an absolute nightmare for the billionaires and for the Democrats and Republicans. I really want working people who are watching this to join me so that we can make the billionaire nightmare and the Democratic and Republican party's nightmare come true, so we can actually do something in Congress. And one other thing is, Jen, you were saying, what can one person do? I mean, that's what we did in Seattle. When I was elected, I say we because I'm referring to working people and me, and I don't mean Democrats and me, I mean working people and me,
Right.
many of whom identify as Democratic voters, but they're not the Democratic politicians or the operatives or the lobbyists. When I was elected, everybody said, well, you can't do much as one person. Now you just, you need to stop being an activist. Now you need to learn from others on the council. That is absolutely bullshit, because the others on the council, meaning the Democratic Party members, politicians, they are the class enemies of the working class. It would have been fatal had I gone to city council and said, oh, these are my colleagues. No, I had to have a very clear class lens, understanding who's on the side of the working class and who is not, and understanding that as nasty and vicious as many of the gatekeepers are against me, and they are, right now there's a turbocharged character assassination machine against me on the ground here in the Seattle area, in the district. But it's not about me. They are doing that because that's one of their weapons against our efforts to build a movement. And so we have to be undeterred and keep building that type of movement. And that is the way we would use that office. I mean, the Seattle Times and the corporate lobbyist, actually the main corporate landlord lobbyist at the time when I was on the city council, he admitted publicly that corporate landlords simply could not win while I was in City Hall. And it's a fact. They simply could not win. Not only did we prevent them from winning anything, we went on the offensive and won unprecedented victories for renters' rights, like a $10 cap on late rent fee, like a winter evictions ban, like a ban on evictions of school children and public school workers during a school year. I mean, you don't have these kinds of laws in so many other cities. But he said correctly so that the reason the corporate landlords could not win was because of quote unquote Sawant's army. And he is dead right. We built an army with one elected office. We built an army of working class people. That is precisely what we intend to do if we are elected to Congress. And that is why no matter where you are in the nation, you have something at stake here to help us get elected. Because if we can get elected, we will have one elected office that is not on team genocide and team billionaire. And that way we can actually accomplish something.
Kshama, I want to ask you what you think the key to your success has been, because any type of left populist uprising that has happened in this country either gets co-opted. There's a lot of saboteurs. Jen and I experienced that firsthand with certain people who found their way into our orbit. There is also something to be said for the hierarchy in the labor movement. Randy Weingarten of the Teachers Union is one of the best examples of that. What would you say has worked for you that has allowed you to get to this point? I mean, do you just sniff out the bad apples pretty quickly? There's got to be perhaps a method or a strategy that others who are, perhaps there are, again, I would definitely say that one of the advantages is to getting into some form of elected office, if you are already city council, county commission, that there are people that are out there in this country that are trying to figure out that pathway. Like, what is it that they should be doing? So what would you say has worked effectively for you outside of the two-party system that others could be emulating right now?
I think, first of all, I would say that you cannot, I mean, if people, lots of people ask me, I should run for office. And I'm saying, no, actually, you should not. And you know why? Because you cannot do what we have accomplished. And this goes to your question, Peter, how did we achieve this level of success? Unless you have the analysis that we have. And honestly, the reason we have the analysis we have is because we are Marxists, and because myself and the group of revolutionary socialists and Marxists around me through Revolutionary Workers, my organization, which is also Revolutionary Workers is also part of Workers Strike Back, the wider organization, working class organization that I founded coming out of my city council work. It's because my fellow revolutionary socialists and we are very clear together about what it takes. And just to give you an example, and you alluded to it already, the saboteurs. Yeah, we have seen a lot of saboteurs even inside the Marxist movement. I mean, for example, in 2024, sorry, go ahead.
No, every movement. That's what I was going to say. They're everywhere.
Yes. Oh, they're everywhere. Yes, exactly. I totally agree. They're everywhere. I'm just saying that includes the Marxist movement as well. Several of us, including myself, dozens of us, we left Socialist Alternative, my previous organization that I was part of for over a decade, because the rest of the leadership, I mean, I was on the leadership too, and a couple of others who are with me now or were also on the leadership, but we could see the direction that it was going in, where they did not want to build Worker Strike Back. They literally wanted us to take $350,000 from working people and then do nothing with it. I mean, that is like, it would have been the most unprincipled thing ever. We refused to do that. And that was the proximate reason we left. But it was overall, there was a deeper political difference that we just want to remain irrelevant. We don't want to take on actual class struggle. Wanting to be irrelevant is also a form of opportunism, because if you're not fighting for something, then the ruling class doesn't attack you. The Democratic Party doesn't attack you because you're of no consequence. The reason I get attacked relentlessly is because we have shown that not only are we relevant, we fucking win, and we know how to win, and we are relentless. And that's part of what it takes also. It takes absolute relentlessness, but it takes relentlessness of, I don't just mean working hard. Obviously, it takes all of that, and it requires the sacrifice of hundreds, thousands of people. But it's not just that. It is what the other thing that you said, the sniffing out of the gatekeepers, that is very, very crucial. And having the stomach to go up against gatekeepers, that is the hardest thing, because it is because of consciousness of the massive, because a lot of people feel, well, but why are you being mean to that person or whatever? I have lots of people coming up to me and saying to me, well, I like what you stand for, but do you have to be critical of this or that Democrat or this or that labor leader? It takes a real stomach to stand up to them. I'll give you a concrete example of where it looked to the kind of stomach that only Marxists have, and not very many Marxists do, even at that, is when we were fighting for the Amazon tax. We launched the Tax Amazon movement in January of 2020, along with my re-election inauguration. We turned my inauguration ceremony into the launch of the movement. And when was the last time you saw something like that, right? I mean, it wasn't about praising anyone elected. It was about turning it into a movement. But, a couple of months after that, as you can remember, COVID hit, stay at home happened, and then the George Floyd rebellion began. We had a whole parade of BLM so-called leaders, I call them misleaders, who immediately went on a rampage against the Tax Amazon movement. Why? Because the Amazon tax demand was hugely popular among the rank and file of the BLM movement. I mean, people were like, fuck yeah, I want to sign that petition. I want to tax Amazon. It was that popular. We collected 30,000 signatures in 3 months for a ballot initiative, which turned out to be the credible threat, which forced the Democrats on the city council to vote yes on the Amazon tax. But all of that happened only because we had the stomach, the backbone to stand up to the gatekeepers. And what happened was all these BLM misleaders who were tied to the Democratic Party and big business, they were on in all these unholy alliances. They started going around spreading a rumor mill saying Amazon tax is not a black issue. She is co-opting, Kshama is co-opting, she's not black. She needs to
Right.
sit down and listen to black people. By what they mean is sit down and not fight for the black working class and poor people. And then the DSA leaders got on board with them saying, yeah, Kshama really needs to stop now. Like let the black people lead. I mean, all of this is code for sit down and sell out the black working class people. By couching it as listen to black people means listen to the black gatekeepers. Don't listen to the thousands of black people who want the Amazon tax. And so the kind of backbone it takes to stand up to those gatekeepers, that is the if you asked me, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we succeed, but if you pressed me and asked me to name one thing that was the secret of success, that's the secret, is the understanding, the ability to sniff out gatekeepers, and the backbone to defeat them, to overcome them, even despite all the rumor mill, despite the character assassination, despite all the attacks. That's what it takes.